So traditional publishing has often been called the gold standard of book publishing. But that's actually not true in the modern age. Maybe it was once, but in today's day and age, it's just a lot of hype. Full disclosure, I don't publish traditionally, and the truth is, except for magazines, which I have been published in, I never even tried to publish traditionally. And that's because we are living in the brave new world of publishing, and I want to take full advantage of that. Because of my familiarity with self, also known as indie publishing, I actually get many people to come to me after they've published traditionally, or at least tried to, and are now ready to embrace indie publishing. So here's what I've learned from my clients that traditional publishing doesn't tell you. And as I said, these are based on my clients' experiences, and yes, a few were even with the big five. Hi novelteers, I'm Devlin Blake, novel writing and self-publishing expert, coach, published author, and former ghostwriter of over 200 books. If you're writing a book, be sure to check out my Novel Writers Club featuring self-directed courses, weekly crits, Ask Me Anything group coaching, and more. You can find out more about it at the link below. So now let's look at the first thing traditional publishing houses don't tell you. You're likely going to need to sell 1 million books to make a profit. That's what a traditional publishing house expects as an average. And while this sounds great, because who doesn't want to sell 1 million books, it also means that if your book doesn't look like it's going to sell that many, then you're either going to be rejected outright or have to have your book go through so many changes that it no longer resembles your original book. I have had clients come to me after getting a traditional publishing deal because now they want to write the book that they really wanted to write and didn't get a chance to. And that's actually not the only reason you could get rejected. You might get turned down for reasons that have nothing to do with how good your book is. Among the reasons I've heard for otherwise decent books getting rejected include they already said yes to another book too much like yours to say yes to yours too, because it would cannibalize their own sales. You don't have a large enough following on social. Yeah, they do look at that. Your age, because if you're too young, which is under 30, or too old, which is over 65, they usually don't want your book. And another issue is if your book is in a dead genre. Then the traditional publishing houses don't want that book either. Dead genres are those that are so overdone that they're not expected to sell. Currently, that includes things like young adult, magical boarding schools, westerns, and a bunch of others. Now, I did want to say there's no such thing as a dead genre in the indie world. Every genre can sell, and usually does. However, in the traditional publishing world, genres go in and out of favor, despite the fact that they still sell great in the indie market. So if your book is in one of these dead genres, traditional publishing houses are not going to be interested. Another thing traditional publishing houses won't tell you is that you're going to be largely in charge of your own marketing. Traditional publishers do some marketing, I'm not saying they don't, but they don't put like millions of marketing dollars towards an unknown when they can put those dollars into someone with a following or a reputation. So if you're counting on a traditional publishing house to do your heavy lifting when it comes to marketing, they likely aren't going to do that until you get more established. It's on you. E.L. James, who wrote fan fiction that later turned into the 50 Shades of Grey series, already had a huge following on her fiction site. Harry Potter was already an extremely popular book series before it got turned into a movie. And Suzanne Collins, who wrote The Hunger Games, already had the connections in place that she needed from her Hollywood days to become a breakout success. Those are the people that traditional publishing houses will spend millions of dollars on, not an unknown. Even in the modern age, many publishers' ideas of marketing revolve around book tours and media appearances. And while those do sound fun, and they can be fun, and they stroke your ego, they don't really sell books. And that's what you want them to do, is sell books. And the fact is, even if you get picked up traditionally, you aren't likely to make much more money than publishing indie. In fact, you might even make less. This is because on average, an author only sees about 10% of their book royalties. I mean, sure, if you're Stephen King or someone, you can likely get more, but not that much more. You can actually make a lot more publishing indie, between 30 to 70% in most cases. And then finally, there's the issue of rights. Publishing houses tie up your rights, and sometimes you can wind up agreeing to rights you didn't know you even agreed to. For example, Despite the fact that I Know What You Did Last Summer made over $125 million with the first movie and had 3 sequels and a series, Lois Duncan got paid a flat rate right at the start without any residuals after. They also changed her story from a psychological cat and mouse game to a slasher flick, and she hated it. I actually met Lois Duncan at an event one time, and she told me, "Don't see the movie, it's garbage." And speaking as someone who has seen the movie and enjoyed it, and read the book, that is not the book. Not even a little tiny bit. And Lois Duncan was very much against violence, so she very much hated that movie. Another example is one of my clients. Over 10 years ago, she wrote a 3-book fantasy series. At least, that was the plan. She wrote the 1 book and published it traditionally, signed the contract, and started working on her 2nd book from the series. But after only 6 months, her book was pulled from the bookstores by the publishing house because it wasn't performing up to expectations. This killed the rest of her series. She wanted to publish traditionally, and she did, but now that she did, she couldn't sell books. So she decided to publish indie. But the problem was the publishing house still had rights to her series, her world, and even her unwritten books. She was not allowed to publish those books indie until the rights reverted back to her. She had to start a new series from scratch in an entirely different world while she waits for the rights, which is in about another 15 years or so. And the thing is, if the publishing house goes under because you picked a small press publishing house and it went under, they still have your rights. I've heard horror stories about that too. They have your rights until the rights are actually dissolved. And that can be tied up in court for decades. And those are some things that you probably didn't know about traditional publishing houses. I go into indie publishing a lot more in my Novel Writers Club. In fact, I have a whole course on it. Publishing 101. That's one of many things that's going to make your book the best it can be. You can find out more at the link below. Until next time, this is Devlin Blake saying right on.